What's up, everyone? Today is Thursday, March 27th. You're listening to Outdoor Cats. As always, I am your host, Bill, and I am with my co-host, Chris, who has prepared a statement on the news coming out of Tufts University that is some of the worst stuff that has happened in this state in a long fucking time. But Chris will say so better than I could.
Yeah, normally you ask me how I'm doing, and I'm glad you didn't. I'm tired, and I'm feeling pretty heartbroken, honestly, and despondent, and I didn't get a lot of sleep last night. And I just wanted to talk about this, and I wanted to. I feel seriously enough about it that I wanted to actually write something down, so I did. And so yeah, here goes. We talked a few weeks ago about the illegal abduction of Mahmoud Khalil, a student at Columbia who was taken into custody from his home in the presence of his 8 months pregnant wife. A few days after that, Badar Khan Suri, an Indian national who was a postdoctoral researcher at Georgetown, was also abducted by agents of the state. His wife is an American citizen of Palestinian descent. Tuesday, we learned that Rumeysa Ozturk, a doctoral student and Fulbright scholar at Tufts University, was abducted by federal agents right here in Massachusetts, in Somerville. They kidnapped her outside of her apartment as she left to go break her Ramadan fast with her friends. She is a Turkish national. In each case, I have seen footage of these people were surrounded suddenly by plainclothes agents masking their faces, stuffed into unmarked vehicles, and disappeared. All three of these people have been taken over 1,000 miles away to a federal detention center in Louisiana. Khalil was taken from New York to New Jersey and then to Louisiana. Ozturk has apparently been transported to Louisiana in defiance of a federal judge's order that she not be removed from Massachusetts. This is from Mass Live. I'm quoting. Ozturk was sent to Louisiana even after U.S. District Court Judge Indira Tawani ordered Ozturk to remain in the state and that the government give 48 hours notice before moving her. And this is a quote from her attorney. Over 48 hours after her arrest, Rumeysa has yet to be processed to her final destination facility, and during this entire time, I have been unable to speak with my client. It was only a few hours ago that I learned that she was sent to Louisiana despite a federal judge's order that she not be removed from the state. Now, I think we have a friendly audience, but I don't entirely know. I do know that I have people that I've called friends and people in my own family who might never speak to me again because of where I stand on this issue. I do not fucking care because the right place to stand on this is the right place to stand. The state of Israel is in the process of a genocidal campaign against the people of Palestine, and it has been openly doing so for going on a year and a half now. We are now not only supporting that genocide with money and weapons, just as we did under the Biden regime, we are actively hunting down any vulnerable activist on a student visa that the grossest scumbags on earth can identify, and these people are being ripped from their homes and their families and being thrown in jail to face deportation. To be clear, that is what is happening here. The government isn't plucking these names out of the air. It is being fed these names by Zionist organizations like Beitar US and Canary Mission. None of these people have been accused of committing a crime. The government has had ample opportunity to articulate any crimes that they have committed, and they are not doing that. That's the point, I think. These people have been arrested and put into deportation proceedings for speaking out against a genocide being perpetrated by Israel. That's it. I don't want to argue with anyone about the finer points of a visa or what was the speech or whatever. It's really fucking simple. People who are in our country from various nations to learn and to educate and to research are being black bagged and shipped out for rendition because they have voiced opposition to a genocide that is ongoing right now, today. If you have been hesitant to speak up on this issue, I would encourage you to consider that it is now or never time, because it's not going to stop with Rumeysa Ozturk, and it's not going to stop with student visa holders either. These cretins have already said that they intend to target naturalized citizens imminently. The time is right fucking now to tell your friends and your neighbors and definitely your representatives in Congress that this cannot stand and that you do not intend to let it stand, and that Congress needs to pull all support from this and every other state committing a genocide. Get in the streets, make noise, do whatever you can. I will be there with you.
That was beautiful, Chris. I co-signed every single word of that. It was moving to hear it spoken aloud. I think just to underscore the point, I'd like to share the audio from a video taken by a neighbor as she was being abducted by men wearing face coverings, no identifiable police insignia of any kind, and then thrown into an unmarked window tinted vehicle with similarly with no identification on it.
This is a okay, it's fine. I'm able to. Okay. Can I just close the car? Well, I'm trying to. Okay, you're okay. Okay, with the police. Okay. Okay, let's go. Ma'am, you got that? Okay. Take a breath. No, can I see your? Yep. We're going to take it right to the car. Come on. I'll show you everything. Okay. Sure. Yep. You're fine.
I understand you. I understand it's scary. Where the police? Where the police?
Where the police?
Yeah, you don't look like it. Why are you hiding your faces? Why are you hiding your faces?
Yep. Can I take everything? Yep, I'm going to get the doctor. Got it with you.
Yeah, we're going to take a look.
I see some faces here. How do I know this is the police? It's like a thing. It looks like
You know, and then that's it. She's off the frame of the video, getting led away by two men with their hands behind her back. And she's gone, disappeared from the streets of Somerville, and now in a Louisiana detention center against a federal court order and being held there for an indefinite amount of time toward an indefinite end for no committed crime. Not even the pretense of a crime. Supporting terrorist organization is, I think, the language that they're using. And when you dig into that, when you look at what that means substantively, the only evidence anyone's been able to produce is an op-ed that she wrote in the Tufts student paper back in March of last year, calling on the administration of the university to divest. So it's not an incendiary op-ed at all. I will put the link in the description, but if you've ever written an op-ed for your student newspaper, I mean, that on this subject, that puts you on the short list, I suppose. So this is really, really, really sort of hard to even process how disgusting this is and how scary it is to consider that this is, just the beginning of what will be an expanding tool of the state, of the executive branch, in defiance of the other two branches. So Yeah, that's a heavy way to start the show. I know, but luckily the rest of the show is going to be on an even on a really cheery topic. The fact that the DOJ report is going absolutely nowhere, and the idea of a civilian review board seems to be split. There's going to be a split vote on this current council if ever we get a civilian review board proposal in front of them.
Mm.
So we're bringing on in a couple of minutes. We're going to bring on two guests. We're going to do two guests at the same time. We have John Keough and Tom Marino from This Week in Worcester. Both of them spoke at the council meeting concerning the DOJ report on Tuesday. And both of them have been really active in sort of covering the ins and outs of the DOJ report and the city's response. Tom Marino especially was pulling out legal codes and stuff in his address to the city council last night. So that's going to be a fun interview. It's going to be fun to chop it up with people who really understand this subject matter intimately for DOJ Files Part 3.
Yeah, I'm really excited to have these guys on and talk this through. There was a lot of this report we didn't even get to in the last times we've covered this, and then now we have the clarity of an entire council meeting that was devoted to just this topic, and we got to see what council intends to do with that information, which appears to be not much.
Yeah. So, I mean, before we get to the interview, so we don't have to try to chop up the news items with four people on mic, but they voted to send the report, the police chief's response, and an item from the police unions that has proven to have no substance to it, demanding the full investigation released. What we have is the full investigation. But nevertheless, they're still sending all of that to the Public Safety Subcommittee, which is chaired by Kate Toomey, who said on record multiple times on Tuesday that she does not support the idea of a civilian review board. She says the post commission is fine. We don't need another layer of bureaucracy, she said, which is hilarious because her entire role in this is a layer of bureaucracy.
She herself is a living layer of bureaucracy.
Right. So all of that is going to the Public Safety Subcommittee, where police reform items typically, if they go there at all, they go there to die, because Kate Toomey has the power to set the agenda. But the Civilian Review Board is not her responsibility. She will maybe, hopefully not, but probably be on the city council that votes on it. But right now, the ball is in City Manager Eric Batista's court. He is the one that is going to draft a Civilian Review Board proposal, and he's doing so with the help of the Worcester Regional Research Bureau, which basically means we're going to get the most middle of the road Civilian Review Board proposal of all time.
Yeah, a very interesting choice of partnership there. Not a body that, or an organization that is known for really having any expertise on this matter. Usually they're sounding in on things like, I don't know, taxes and shit. Yeah, very interesting. What the other interesting dynamic, though, I think, is the city manager has, at least in theory, voiced some support for the idea of a civilian review board. And we've talked about this a little bit in the past. I am personally of the opinion that a milquetoast civilian review board is actually worse than no civilian review board at all. And I don't know. I don't see us getting a good one. And my personal opinion is I'd almost rather get none than get a shitty one. But luckily, I have no fucking power whatsoever in what's going to happen. So we'll just get to watch it play out and see what pile of shit we get.
Yeah. Well, I guess we'll save the rest for the interview with our guests. But there's also some funny parts to this, including the defense of dog bites via the legal precedent for a dog bite ratio, which I'm very
ratios.
I'm very excited to ask Tom and John about. But yeah, let's get to the interview. Who do we have on the show here? Who do we have? We have Tom Marino and we have John Keough, both writers for This Week in Worcester, both city council public commenters who are at the special DOJ meeting on Tuesday. And I thought both of you did a very nice job with your comments, but I assume you watched the rest of the meeting. And, how do you think it went?
The public comment coming from the union leaders, I think you expected that. They just kind of replayed the hits. Mm-hmm. It's the same folks doing the same thing. I find it interesting that, as Tom points out, that the law can't allow them to release the names of the officers or the victims. They still insist on saying that repeatedly. And so I found that interesting. Even when you talk to them in person, and I got myself into a nice little confrontation with Mr. Cipro, as I often do. I brought that up to him, and it doesn't matter. It doesn't matter if you show them the law, if you show them the correct things, they just ignore you and pretend that it doesn't exist. So it's just a strategic cognitive disconnect. They're aware of it and don't care. Just like Freddie Nathan likes to get up and say that Rachel Rollins originated the investigation, even though that's just flat out not true. And you tell this to Freddie, you show him the dates, and it doesn't matter. It's Rachel Rollins, and so and because she's a bugaboo, so it's easy for them to go against her. And but of course, Freddie was prompted to that as well, right? So it's not like he does that on his own. Someone said that in his ear, so he got up there and said that on his own. So that part I expect, and I almost laugh. And when I'm talking to Tom in the hallway as we're listening to it, it's funny because it's just like I said, it's the hits keep on coming. I am often still disappointed by the city council's response, though, and the mayor. I don't know why I keep setting myself up to be hopeful that there'll be a better response, but I guess I should expect that too. But I guess I'm eternally hopeful that things can get better. And but that those things happen. I thought, and I wrote it in my article for Tom. I thought the exchange between Councillor King and the chief at the end was really the only thing of merit or value, where you had actual questions and then actual responses, and you saw him not be a robot, right? So he was engaging on the Walmart incident, which we already knew that was an incident that was kind of overblown by the DOJ. But the other incidents, he didn't respond that way, right? He was he was very conciliatory. It was like, well, we know we need to work on this and we need to work on that. So it's interesting when there's something to the incident, they are conciliatory. But when they have an incident where they can really respond, which I don't know if you ever seen the video of the Walmart incident, that cop dives over the car, pulls the guy out of the door, and then they have the little scuffle. So, that one they should have, I don't understand why the city manager won't let him show that video. And because there's the ongoing litigation, I guess, is the thing. But to me, That's civilian oversight. Okay, we think you beat up a guy for no reason, and the cop says, no, we didn't. Here's the video to prove it. Well, why didn't we see that video a year ago when the incident actually happened?
Well, then you'd have to show the other videos.
Exactly.
Well, and that's my thing is, and I believe him to some degree, maybe not on this topic, but in general, like I think, the city manager wants to be more transparent, at least than his predecessor, which wouldn't be hard because there was almost no transparency with him.
Right.
But, on this stuff, I just don't get the fear. Like, obviously, the police unions have pull political weight in the city. But, just to vote for this petition that is, asking for a thing that's against the law, that is outside of their redefined purview, and they just voted through it to committee because, why? Because they're afraid the unions won't like it if they don't? I don't understand, why we're trafficking in nonsense because we think it's going to be politically advantageous. It's ridiculous.
Yeah. So for listeners who don't know what we're referring to, there were 3 items on the agenda. One of those was an item that's been on the table, so to speak, since the DOJ report came out. That's from all of the top brass of the police union demanding that they release, the DOJ releases the quote unquote full report. Many people being on record being there is no full report has not stopped them from requesting this, and it's become sort of the main talking point of all of the sort of police brass, and it was a split vote, the same split vote that it always is on everything of substance. But the 6 horsemen of the apocalypse sent that to public safety, where I for one am very confident that it's going to get a fair hearing and come back with some really good recommendations. That's what tends to happen in the public safety subcommittee.
Yeah. And to put a fine point on it, the full report, what they're really trying to get at is they want the names of the alleged victims that are alleging these horrendous acts happening against them of violence and of sexual assault, etc. And in a criminal court, you do get to know your accuser, but unfortunately, no one here is in a criminal court, and probably never will be. This is just a report. And what they're trying to do, I can't think of a better way to put it, but to say they're trying to dox their victims. They're trying to get people's names out so that they can drag them through the mud and sully them, and probably other things, bully them, etc. As we know that they have a history of doing.
Did you guys catch one of the last public speakers was the guy from Epica? What's his name?
Kevin Lynch.
Kevin Lynch said that he knows one of the victims personally, and that there's absolutely no way that she would come forward. And I don't know if I can blame her after seeing the way that Thomas Duffy was speaking in particular. I think I would also be scared to come forward.
So there's two parts of this, right? It's they say they want to, and we say they very broadly, right? What the unions are saying, and look, unions have one job: represent their members, right? Mm-hmm. And so, I don't certainly don't give what they do as much weight as what city councilors do, because they're there to do one job. But the idea that we want to know who the cops are so we can do something about them. Well, one, you don't have a process. You've bent over for the unions for so long that firing anybody is almost impossible. Mm-hmm. So I do think that there is some genuine, we need to know who these guys are so we can not, maybe it's put them, they say they want to fire them, but probably put them in a spot where they can't hurt people, right? Mm. But if you know who the officers are, that just gets you closer to what the cases are, and closer to, in some of those, the report says there was complaints filed that they didn't follow, the complainant didn't follow through on. That leads you right to the victims, and then all the stuff that you talked about. So I'm hard pressed to believe that would be kind of orchestrated from the top. But if it's known inside, the
so-called if we want to buy into the bad apples argument, the bad apples certainly won't care about behaving properly.
The chief actually kind of gave you I felt like he lifted the veil a little bit, because they did go through the report with a fine-tooth comb to identify that Walmart case. So they
If they get that one, they get them all.
But they really went to the ends of the earth to take that 2-sentence summary and figure out exactly which case it was. So I think that they probably do have a general understanding. And again, the chief, this chief is different than Steve Sargent in that he lets things out a little bit at a time. He's like the belt giver. So if you go to the Telegram and Gazette article, he admitted that there were 4 officers who self-reported sexual contact, right? Which is very interesting, because the 3 union chiefs said there's absolutely not a single incident ever. But then Chief Saucier says, but there's 4 that I know about, right? So very interesting way to do that. And then if you go to the DOJ report and kind of look at that thing, though the DOJ said it was more than 4 officers, there was a group of them, right? So how do they play those thin lines between, all right, did they really have the 4 guys that we know about, or do they have all of the guys? If we admit to the 4 guys that we know about, then maybe this part will go away. And you can kind of see those wheels happening live, which is very interesting to do it. And I do think Counselor King did a good job of kind of picking it apart, in that he brought up the baselessness thing. He said it at least 2 or 3 times to the gallery above me. He says, well, I guess it's not baseless then. And, I remember people that, he kept mentioning that baselessness, specifically about the commendations that the DOJ gave the chief, in that he had been responding to the data collection portion and admitting that there is racial bias, 80% more likely to get pulled over if you're black. The numbers are so giant that you can't hide them. So in that case, the chief's well, it's so big, we can't hide it, so we're just going to admit this part. But if we can hide these other parts, I think that's kind of what Tom is kind of scratching at, is that there is this group of deputy chiefs and captains and lieutenants that make up the Slytherin section of the police department. And in that group, they will dive into it until they figure out the thing that they can to pull out that person's name. I've been doing the same thing. I've been trying to get conversations with a couple of the women, and they know me as an ally. They know me as someone who wouldn't tell their names or release any information, but they're literally visibly afraid when you meet them, that there's someone watching, that there's someone listening, that they could be hurt. And so I brought this to the chief myself. How can you not see this reaction as a major concern? And I think that he does, but I think that Tom has kind of put it right on the nose over the past 6 months. I think he doesn't have the tools to be able to do what maybe he would be the one guy who would do,
Yeah.
He's expressed publicly, I think on Manny's show, his frustration with his ability to get rid of people.
Yeah.
I mean, so yeah. Let's sit on that idea for a second. What are some tools to your mind that the chief doesn't have, but would like to? What is really in the way of?
He needs cover.
You're right.
He needs a civilian board or an inspector general that can run cover for him, because then he can say, well, look, I did everything I could, guys, to keep them off of our guys, but they found the information. There's nothing we can do. We got to fire, Joe, Bill, Bob, and Alex. And not that any of those names have anything relative to what I'm saying. I would never say anything, but they need to get rid of those particular guys. I think that's what he wants. He wants cover. And I think he's begging. In his version of begging, he's begging for it. And Counselor King asked him, is there anything in the collective bargaining agreement that would allow you to fire somebody who lies on their reports? And he just came out and said it. No.
Yeah, right.
Not to mention that's a crime in Massachusetts.
Right.
It's a crime.
Knowingly filing a false report of any kind when you're a public official is a misdemeanor, right?
Yeah.
So, I was used the beer garden thing. That wasn't unreasonable force. That wasn't, you put in the report, the failure to report accurately 6 months later. You beat up a kid for nothing, and then you charge him with crimes. If that doesn't get you fired, I don't know what should.
Yeah. The reading the that incident in particular, and like you read like the first police report that was filed about it, you're like, oh my god, they really it's not just like an internet trope to be like cops lie. Like, no, they fucking like that's a bald face lie right there.
The video was there.
Yeah, right.
And so my point about that, though, is, okay, so either you believe that this happened once, that one time, it just happened to be surveillance video there, and this is the only time that's ever happened, or it's not the only time it's ever happened. And so who's looking for bad cases, right? Who's now doing a review of, I don't know how you'd whittle down what case you want to look at, but who's trying to figure out if we put anybody in jail, it doesn't belong there? And the answer is no one, because they don't care. And in the case of city council, they don't care because it won't happen to them.
Right, yeah. Well, that's it. Well, but that's not what I heard from. That's not what I heard from Councillor Kate Toomey on Tuesday night. She seemed to suggest that adding another layer of bureaucracy, as she called it, as she sits in the bureaucracy chair, would be a bad. Would be counterproductive. But here we have the chief saying, I kind of need to do something about this. But we have the sitting chairman of the police. The police subcommittee saying, no, we don't need a civilian review board. And she wasn't the only one to say that. And if my political antenna is attuned properly, I think we might be looking at a 6-5 vote against a civilian review board if Eric ever put one on the table.
Which he won't until after the primary.
Right.
So the mayor said on the mayor said the other day, I've historically been against it. I'm going to look at it again. So he's trying to leave himself room to move. And if he, and we all know if he moves, at least 2 or 3 of the others will move.
Yeah.
Well, I think that the chief in that answer, that little series, it's funny that we have to do this. We have to like read into things to really kind of understand what's going on behind closed doors, because they're so non-transparent that you have to, like, every time they pull their vest up, you got to like, well, look, what did I see in there? But when the chief is exchanging that, the thing about the lies, and he then admits that there's actually the prosecution list. By the way, this is one of the great secrets in Massachusetts history, is the cops that are not allowed to testify, and that's because and this is a great credit to the public defender's branch of Massachusetts state law and all the government. They sued and won back in the 90s the access to that list. So anytime there's a case, they can check the name of the officer against that list. And what prosecutors have done as a policy is, instead of allowing the officer to testify, which could often lead to an acquittal or maybe a dismissal of charges, they just don't allow those officers to testify. And they have a testimony officer who comes in and reads the report. He admitted that this is the first time any chief, right? Remember Chief Gary there and Steve have both been asked this question before. Are there any officers that are on the non-testify list? And they both said, I'm not sure. I don't know about that list. It's not provided to me. You'd have to ask DA Early. Chief Saucier, to me, that was a stunning moment in the thing. Of course, no one else thought it was stunning, but me and Tom.
I missed this one completely. I was too busy fucking cracking jokes or whatever, but so he admitted that there are officers on that list.
Yes. Now, he didn't tell you who they are, and he's not going to give access to that list. But now, if you're a defense attorney in the city of Worcester that's involved in some of these cases, you start public like it's a reference, go after that list. I think he's saying, I'm not protecting these guys anymore from his position. Now, as the chief, he can do that now. He's in there. He's sworn in there. They can't get rid of him now, right? The 3 guys that tried to take him out last year, right. They've been cuckolded, right, by the mayor. So now he can do what he has to do, and he's saying, I'm not going to protect these guys. One of them is Tivnan, one of the greatest liars in the history of Worcester, is now exposed as a guy we know can't testify in any of the cases that he's a part of. And so I think the chief buried him right there. Now, he didn't say it by name, but that's his way of doing it. I know that you guys all want a even more transparent chief that would say it's actually Officer so-and-so, but it is what it is. Now we know that those officers exist, at least acknowledging what we all knew to be true anyways.
Yeah. Can I stop us there for just a second, just for the sake of our listeners, and just say the list that we're talking about, if it's not clear, there are these there are lists that DAs in various counties keep, basically, of officers who are not to be called to testify because they have a demonstrated record in reports and in testimony at trials of lying. And contradicting their own reports to the extent that it actually endangers prosecutions. And so there is this list of officers that it's like, if that's the guy who wrote the report or the person who wrote the report, it's actually, you shouldn't call them, because their testimony can be, their testimony can be cross-examined on this like general idea of the fact that we know that they lie in reports. There is like a proven record of that. So that's kind of that's the list that we're talking about. And this list has been harder to come by, still harder to come by, but at least we know it exists. It's been harder to come by in Worcester County than in a lot of other counties, where in some cases we actually do know who are the officers who have this record of routinely lying in reports to the point that they're not to be called as witnesses.
Mm.
And Tom actually points it out in his article about the beer garden case, right? He said, like, is this the only time it's ever happened? And the chief just admitted, no, it's not the only time that's ever happened, because to get on that list, as Chris just pointed out, you have to have a demonstrated record of consistently being dishonest in your reporting. And in the union, in the actual collective bargaining agreement, to get on that list, for them to give the name to the DA, you have to have a citation from a supervisor. So these are officers who have been cited for lying by their own supervisors, which is hard to do in the Worcester Police Department. And they exist. And he didn't say officer, he said officers. So at least we know there's some record keeping they're doing, which we do not have access to, because those citations are like Fort Knox, right? I guess we'd need Mr. Trump and Mr. Elon to get us in there to be able to see the gold. There's a vault somewhere that we're not
doge
seeing.
The WPD headquarters. We're gonna doge it up. Release the documents. So you guys are probably, sounds like, similarly avid readers of civil suits against the Worcester Police Department. And if you read enough of those civil suits, you start to assemble an ensemble cast of names from the police department that keep coming up and up and up over and over again. Tivnan, one of them. Also one of them, Thomas Duffy, the guy who spoke about how the report was baseless at the city council meeting.
Why in such an important report is it not even a mention of the motive or truthfulness of some of the so-called credible witnesses, some of whom are likely career criminals or have family members serving lengthy prison terms for their convictions or have motives to lie against law enforcement? We will continue to fight back against this report. We know the anti-police activists on this council will continue to attack us. We ask that you look at this report fairly and impartially. This report lacks the most basic foundation of reliability.
Part of the reason he was so mad, Bill, was my fault, because I actually printed out all of his incidents that he's been, civilian complaints, and I made a bunch of copies of it, and I put it with the city council, the little meeting notes, and all of them were taken. So he was raging against me. He won't talk to me directly. Right, because I have confronted him more than once, because he's a classic bully, just wants to be a tough guy, and I hate that. I can't stand those kind of tough guys. So I'm not a small man. So when I've stood toe to toe, and what are you gonna do, buddy? That kind of nonsense, which I don't want to do, but that's kind of how they actually interact and respect people based on that. Like, so if you turn around and say, hey, you cuss them out, shut the fuck up, then they'll, I don't know if we can swear on outdoor cats. Can we swear on outdoor cats?
Oh yeah.
Yeah. So he was mad at me the whole night. He was staring at me, doing the double daggers. And then Anthony Petrone and Rick were up in the balcony, making comments like the whole time, because they know I'll say something to them, but they retreat into that little, I'm a schoolyard bully kind of mentality.
Right.
So I definitely affected his emotional state that night. I did it on purpose because, again, these are obvious things. He has actually said at the last meeting that he's never had a complaint against him. So, okay, you never had a complaint against him. Well, let's see if you do. And then we put it down right there to show people that that's not true. And I showed it to all the counselors. I made sure all the counselors knew. Kate was not there conveniently, so I didn't get to show it to her.
Yeah.
I handed it to the mayor. I handed copies out to everybody, made sure that they knew.
Yeah. That's a good prank.
I just pulled that up. They have officer information cards that just list the complaints against them. I might have miscounted because it goes on to a third page, which I think it's the only one I've seen. I haven't seen them all by any means, but I have a bunch of them. I think this is the only one I've seen that's gone on to a third page. But I counted 14 separate unnecessary force accusations that, of course, were all exonerated or found unfounded.
Yeah.
Exceptionally cleared. I love those terms that they have.
That's my favorite one.
Yeah.
It doesn't exist anywhere else. This is the only place that we accept that people get exceptionally cleared.
Right. Yeah. Who was it that exceptionally cleared pretty much everyone? Davenport, Bureau of Professional Standards or whatever. There was like a 2 or 3 year stretch where everybody got exceptionally cleared, and that's crazy.
So here's the thing about that, though. Like, I'm kind of, I've gotten off of necessarily focusing on. I mean, are there bad people in the police department? Absolutely. Is there bad people in any group of 500 people, anywhere you go? But I think this is really about leadership. I mean, we had 20 years of what I think is horrific leadership. I mean, my personal assessment, looking at the Gem years, was Bops was a political tool for him to beat people over the head who, didn't agree with him on something, or backed a different union leader that he preferred, or things like that. And then Sargent came in, and it really feels like he just went, screw all this political stuff. Just clear everybody of everything. And they by and large did. But at the same time, like, the people, there's egregious examples, like in the Cosenza case, right? The person that actually wrote that report was Doherty's partner in the Trump case. That's who wrote the report.
Right.
So, I mean, just throw that thing away. It's just not credible, right?
Yeah. Can we stop there for a second? Can you talk a little bit about the Davenport case, and then I can talk a little bit, or if you want, about the Natron case?
I think you mean the Cosenza case.
Oh, sorry, the Cosenza case. Yes.
Yeah. So I've gotten to know Nat a little bit. So I just say that to say maybe there's. I mean, I wouldn't say we're not hanging out on a regular basis. I tried to drink with him once before he did an event I asked him to do, but I've got to know him a little bit. I talked to him here and there. Just put that out there so anybody can judge that for bias if they want.
No way.
So he did 16 years in jail for what was essentially a home invasion and seems to be an attempted rape. There's all kinds of issues with identification, how they did the photo array, a whole bunch of stuff. And his conviction was overturned after the Supreme Court did this very years-long study, I think, into witness reliability and such. And he was one of the first people released after all that stuff was completed. So, it's questionable if he was wrongly convicted in that sense. However, he then files suit. They go to civil court, and a civil jury finds that Hazelhurst manufactured and fabricated evidence, and Doherty conspired with him to do so. Doherty was not held responsible for actually fabricating evidence or manipulating evidence. And then, of course, the city got itself removed from the case. So it is only the two cops that are on the line. The jury found $8 million as an award for Nat, which he's not ever going to collect because these two cops don't have $8 million. There was an item before for executive session, I don't know, a few weeks ago, maybe a month ago. So they had an executive session with counsel for something about the Cosenza case. Of course, we don't know what it was. That would indicate that the city has kind of jumped back in and is trying to get to a settlement here, because the cops settled with Cosenza, and everything we know from the public record is that there was no money exchange. So obviously he's not going to give 16 years of his life for no money. So that means they have some sort of agreement with, the speculation is that the cops were going to sue the city. And so now the city's back in. Sense. Yeah. So now the city's back in trying to make this all go away. And I'd imagine, I don't know any of this, right? But I imagine that the thing the cops were going to hang their lawsuit on was that it was the same lawyers that represented the city were representing them. And I'd imagine they'd argue that those lawyers were representing the city after the city had been removed from the case and not them, right? And that could get very ugly. So now the city, it appears, is back in and trying to get to an end to this thing.
Yeah. And if you'll indulge me for a second, I will run through. I worked a bit on the Natron case in various capacities, and I'll let you all fill in whatever I miss or forget. But Natron was a woman who was arrested as a result of the death of her infant baby. Infant baby is redundant, I guess, but the death of her baby, and there was no indication of any kind of foul play or anything like that. The baby died. She was, a teenager, and they decided that she had killed her baby, and that she had smothered her baby. And they brought her in for an interrogation, and they interrogated her for hours and hours. We will link to David Bowery, former BUR reporter, did an amazing piece on this called Anatomy of a Bad Confession. And they go through, we have video of this, which is the only reason that that Natron is not rotting in jail right now. We have video of this confession where she is badgered and badgered and badgered and led, and she doesn't have anything to give them. There's no indication that she killed her child. And what they work on her and they work on her, and when they finally get her to crack, she came from a really bad family situation and had some younger siblings. And the way they finally get her to crack, in my recollection, is they tell her that they'll get help for her siblings if she cooperates. And then she starts to parrot their story back to them. Well, what did you do? And did you smother the baby? Yeah, I smothered the baby, et cetera, et cetera. She gets brought up on murder charges on this. She misses the funeral of her own child. She's held in jail, and then an amazing public defender gets his hands on this video, and this all comes out. And long story a lot shorter, she is not tried and ends up winning a $2.1 million settlement against the city of Worcester for this coerced confession to a murder that they decided that she committed, and then basically badgered her into confessing to. So yeah, that's my understanding of this.
Yeah, so, I would just add one thing to that is what the actual technique that they used that was illegal, and I got this from somebody at the Innocence Project, was they promised her, they were telling her, we can get you tried in juvenile court, and that is
yes, that's right.
Yes. That is I think a lot of the techniques that they used, if you watch the whole video, which is horrific, are plenty illegal. They can lie to you all they want, basically, but there are certain things, especially
they can't tell you, they can't make you offers of what will happen to you in an interrogation, which they did.
So you guys are telling me that one of the guys that was involved with that bad confession also put Nat Cosenza in jail for 16 years?
Yeah, so the Cosenza case was actually happened well before the Tron case. But the lawsuit didn't happen and all that until well after the Tron case, right? It was just the last few years.
Yeah.
And when Cosenza filed suit, they then assigned it to Bops to go figure out what happened. The internal investigators to go figure out what happened. And the guy that wrote the report, with Doherty involved now in the Cosenza case, the guy that wrote the report was the other interrogator of trial.
Wow. That's
so just throw that thing away. It's just worth nothing.
Right.
It's worth nothing.
You would think that in the DA's office, right? Which, Joe Early And those DAs that have worked there for many, many years, there's actually one or two that are not bad, but there's a group of DAs there. Their number one goal for years, and they have it like posted in the offices if you go in there, is to protect their conviction rate. That's like their number one goal. That's how they do promotions. That's how they do. And so it's this one. Middlesex County was like that for a long time. DA Ryan there that's now has kind of changed the culture a little bit, but there's several, that's what they do. They have like a temperature gauge that shows the level of red that's close to this conviction rate. And if you have like a year where you have 100% conviction rate, they give you prizes. And they have it's insane. Like that's a literal thing that they do, which blows my mind. Of course, DA Early will never admit that, even though I got pictures and it doesn't matter. But, so it's pointless to even go down that road with him because it's just it just is what it is with that office. Everybody knows it at this point. So you would think that someone in that office would go, "Hey, we shouldn't do this because this conviction might get overturned because of yada yada yada." They didn't listen to their own like internal thought process on this because they become so bloodthirsty about locking up a little girl or locking up a guy that fits the mold for this case, and they don't pay attention to the clear indicators that maybe the police investigation is bad, even in an environment where the police investigation that they get delivered on a regular basis is almost too buttoned up, right? Like with the reports are like exact. The beer garden case, you brought up that first police report, but if you go look at the 4 supporting police reports, they're almost verbatim, like word for word, even though they're one of the officers that wrote the supporting report, and Tom has it in the little video, he's actually involved in a scuffle with somebody else in the top of the video. So he's one of the supporting officers. So somehow, while he's taking down another guy, he was able to observe the exact same angles that the original reporting officer wrote, right?
Yeah,
so
well, head on a swivel, you know?
Yeah, he's very hyper aware, you know, that military training got him able to see everything.
As soon as you can put the badge on, you got eyes in the back of your head, and you also don't get tired. I don't know if you saw that piece in the last week.
You can work, 80, 90, 100 hours a week between overtime details.
It has no effect on you. That badge makes you instantly RoboCop.
Oh yeah.
It was great to have Kate question the chief. So one of the studies in that, the study that I pulled out, the Stanford one, it actually is really not a singular study. It's a cumulative study over 100 years of every study about fatigue in the workplace. And it's not just police-based. It's like, someone who's like sitting at a desk for 56 hours, they start to drop. And it's just this consistent science that's existed for 100 years, right? And but it was put out by the National Organization of the Chiefs of Police as proof that they needed more help. And they wanted the federal government to support hiring more officers. So they used that study to support, hey, our officers are tired and we need more help. We need to hire more officers. So then Kate questioned it on the floor, right? So I went and gave a testimony about that. And then Kate questioned that study. So the same study that the police chiefs used to get them to hire more officers, our chair of public safety says, well, no, that study's not good. So I wonder if, and maybe I have to do a little bit more research, if ever she's asked for more officers, they have that study somewhere at the footnotes, right? Because it would be great to have her both support the study and also question it at the same time at a different place. Because that seems to what they just use whatever's convenient for the moment, including in these cases where they're just like, well, in this case, it is what it is. And if there's a big concern, I would say, about the chief changing. I don't know if you noticed, the state is getting rid of the pyramid of force regulations. The state's trying to move away from that to that Supreme Court case, which talks about a reasonable officer, which is a big, big, big change for pyramid of force cases because there's no escalation pattern, right? So you can just go right to, pepper spraying someone in the face when they question you. You know what I mean? And because that's, if a reasonable officer would do that, then that's a response.
Right. Okay. So I'm a little unclear on that. So the pyramid of force you're talking about, like it's like level 1 through 4.
Yeah.
Right. Where 4 is like like using a taser or a gun or
Yep.
spray, and then like it goes down to like, you know, putting hands on somebody or something.
Step one is actually escalated voice. That's what step one is.
Okay.
So step one is controlling somebody through an emotional charge. That is their first step. And then the second step would be actually touching somebody. Step three would be like, you know, some kind of takedown, or like we're not going to just touch you, but we're going to like armbar you or try to get you down. And then the last step is that escalated, you know, use of deadly force. And they do consider a taser in that pyramid to be the same decision as using a gun, right? So when you're, you know, and so in the pastor's case, right, which Tom did another good job about the pastor. The pastor is drive stunned twice when he's face down on the ground. So he's and in the video you can hear him. He's crying at this point. He's like, I'm giving up. I'm giving up. And the officer hits him twice after that point. Bang, bang, in the back while he's on the ground. And under the current standard, which hasn't been changed yet, Chief Saucier definitely was arguing for that on the floor of the council the other day. The city's going to have to pay out a tremendous amount of money to this pastor. And, you know, Tom and I have both heard rumors, but I'm hearing rumors that, you know, this payout could be the biggest ever in the city of Worcester's history, because the lawyer that the pastor got is like a real lawyer, right? So like a guy who goes after big companies. So that is not supposed to be changed, but now they want that standard to be how a reasonable officer would respond based on his perception in the moment, which opens the door up to all the lawsuits that existed in the 80s and the 90s and the early 2000s, where there were a bunch of police departments who used that standard. The pyramid of force kind of forced a lot of police officers and police departments around the country to use the same standard. And so that's all that was about. But there's too many cases now, and so the state is now considering changing the legislation, which I don't understand where that comes.
That seems entirely regressive. I mean, given what we know, I don't want to. Who decides reasonable? Is it another officer? Is it the supervisor?
Well, I mean, isn't that the core problem, though? I mean, in the end, what do you have? And if you send something to BOPS, it's another, you know, it's somebody in the Brotherhood who's investigating. That's like if I get accused of something and John investigates, how's that going to turn out?
Right.
You know,
right.
It's just obvious on its face. Like, no institution, no institution anywhere in the history, like since humans began forming institutions, has an institution successfully policed itself. It's never happened.
Yeah.
So, but, you know, I've been trying to beat the drum on, you know, no offense to anybody who's been fighting for a civilian review board for now, ever. You know, I'm not, you know, if you look around the country, they often, more often than not, at the very least, turn into, you know, you write reports that go to the chief and the chief throws them in the trash.
I agree with you, Tom, by the way. A less than stellar civilian review board, I have argued for many years, is worse than not having one. It's just another rubber stamp of, you know, onto you know, the bad conduct of police.
Yeah.
Anyway.
And so I'm a big fan of I mean, what I really want is an independent assessment of the facts. Like, let's have a fact determiner that's outside the police department and has not worked there. And then you send that to the chief, then he can make his management decision, right? I don't think that the investigator needs to make the discipline decision. But if we all have access, and this is the facts, as we know them, this is the official determination by the city of the facts, now we have something to work with, right? Yeah. Now we actually can understand what really happened. And then we can criticize the city manager or the chief or whoever, or if it was in another part of government, you know, if it was an IG that had, you know, jurisdiction over the government at large, you know, then we can criticize the people who are making the determination on what the discipline is. But we all have the same set of facts, and that's not happening right now. And you know, some folks poo-poo me when I try and have sympathy for the cops, but imagine you're an internal investigator at the police. You're the person doing the investigation. How much pressure are you under to find a way to get to know this didn't happen? Immense pressure. Immense pressure.
Yeah, I mean that's not that's like somebody. I mean, there's been whole TV shows made about this. Like somebody who actually takes IA seriously gets chewed up and spit out by the department freaking Forrest Whitaker in The Shield. Like, yeah, it's entirely unreasonable, but we've been provided an answer on the data and transparency question from our police department. And folks, it's called Hexagon. Hexagon's going to come in. Hexagon is going to, in 12 to 18 months when they install this new software, it's got to be a pretty big software if it takes 12 to 18 months to install. But, we're going to start having racial data reporting on traffic stops and stuff like that. There's going to be a public dashboard. What do you guys make of this, of our move to Hexagon?
So when I was doing the drone story, right, for Patch, what happened was that was my real like interaction with Chief Saucier outside of when I was a teenager, right? So I started to talk to him, and he was the one who let me in. He's the one who showed me, and he was very showing me the shot spotter dashboard and the pictures and all that other stuff. And he's a huge tech guy, loves tech, loves everything related to tech, loves data collection, and so this definitely is very much him saying, "Give me this tool," which is a tremendously expensive tool, Hexagon. By the way, the National Organization of Chiefs of Police are shareholders in that company. Anyways, there's nothing to see there. Nothing to see there at all. Right?
Interesting. So, I got to buy stock in this company. Wow.
Yeah.
Next shot spotter on our hands here.
Yeah. Well, I mean, he was offered the job, remember, with the ShotSpotter company. So
do I remember? Yep.
And by the way,
I don't think he was. I think he did. I mean, let's be. I like to be clear on the facts. What we know is that he inquired about interviewing. The interview never happened.
Yes. That's
yeah.
But he would have got. My understanding is that if he wants that job, it's in the bag, because he's actually a chief who doesn't. Interestingly enough, he's kind of like a clean, like super squeaky clean guy as far as like things being thrown at him. And so like that's part of the reason why I think that he got picked, is he's done his career and avoided a lot of controversial stuff, which is not easy to do, because he was at one point beat partners with Steve Sargent. Like that, they were actually partners at one point. And but interestingly enough, it was one of the shorter partnerships of all time when it came to patrol officers. It only lasted like 1 year, and then Paul cycled out. Now, I don't want to read into that too much, but maybe he was thinking, maybe I shouldn't be with this guy so long, even though that guy ended up the chief as well. So I think that. I think that the focus on data collection is, again, another distraction from having to deal with anything in the past, right? Because now they can say, well, we have this new standard of data collection, so we can review current cases, but it's going to be really hard for us to go back in time because the data wasn't collected at the right way. So we're sorry, but this is what we can do versus that's what we can do. Yeah. And I really think that's really what he's doing.
I think the 12 to 18 months is largely because they've got a ton of stuff on paper in that building, right? Yeah. And that's all going to be entered. So, and I mean, I'm sort of the software I don't know much about it. Sounds huge, right? Sounds like it's going to reach every department of every division within the department and blah, blah, blah. So I'm not too worried about the timeline. And I mean, look, what they can access for data now is nothing. It's bad. Like what they have now is bad. So, that they're improving that is good. I don't know if, it's this piece of software is the ticket here, but I mean, I've asked for things, and I believe them when they're told, like, we would have to do that, we would have to go through records manually and compile that for you. And, that's obviously not we don't have to do that. We're not going to.
Right, yeah.
But it's on things that you would think it shouldn't be that way. So, I mean, their IT stuff is ancient.
Yeah.
Things like with Duffy, when we were talking about that series of complaints, I've actually been told, hey, if you submit them one at a time, we'll probably give them to you for free. But if you actually ask us to go by officer and collate all those reports, we're gonna go under that, the standard, and then the copying costs and the hourly wages for the person who's doing the copying. And they are willing to give it to you like in pieces, and so I think that the data will make it more readily available. But those old reports, I don't know how long it's going to take them to scan all that stuff in. Who knows how long it's going to take? They probably going to, knowing him, he'll hire some offsite company. I don't think he'll have officers doing that. I doubt very, very much that anybody internally will be doing that.
Yeah. There's two parts that I want to talk about briefly because they were from the meeting Tuesday. The first one is this common nightwalker statute thing as their answer on the stream. A lot of people were kind of rightly pointing out how the chief talked about this question was pretty interesting. A lot of talk about not putting our officers in positions where they can be accused, not putting our officers in positions where they're going to, sexually assault someone. It was all sort of draped in this this language of like an uncredible allegation. But I don't know if anybody wants to take a crack at explaining what the common nightwalker statute is. I certainly am not capable of doing that.
So the common nightwalker statute is if there's an offer and an acceptance verbally, the person does not have to be inside the vehicle, and they can still arrest them or hold them in this sting operation mechanic that they do. And what they do is they go into the neighborhood, they get the girls to come to the car, and if they make the offer and the offer is accepted, they can now hold her and then clear the neighborhood out. So then they're undercover women officers, by the way, which there's only 4 of them that do this, can go into the neighborhood and they're trying to get a specific John, right? Not me, but, the person who's trying to buy sex. Right. So in this case, it used to be that they had to go. The other nightwalker statute was that they had to go into the car and make the offer inside of the car. So they had to come off the street, so to speak, be in the car, and then make the offer and have it exchanged, and then they could be arrested. And of course, they used to use a touching technique, right? This is something he's admitted now, where the girl had to touch the officer, the undercover person, and then that was considered cementing the contract. So that was their former investigatory technique that they trained officers on for decades, which is nonsense when you know that female officers who are playing prostitutes, their policy is you can never, ever, ever be touched. And so there's the double standard, right? And then mentions the 4 guys who self-reported in this case. And he said, well, I don't want to put them in the case of being accused ever again. So this is really where you get the victims are being told, hey, the things that you said, we're going to completely minimize them, and we're going to make it like it didn't happen. And then now we're going to just do the legal thing we need to do to make sure our officers are never accused again. Right. And so that's that part of that I disagree with Chief Saucier. And it goes to that culture of silence that Tom has been hammering him on for a year. The police department just doesn't want to talk about their internal culture, which leads to this exact kind of thing. This is where public and civilian oversight is so important. How did we not know as a society that a regular thing was having a girl touch an officer on his crotch over the clothes or under the clothes as a normal practice was a standard taught? There are books you can buy that teach this technique. That's insane. Right.
Yeah.
How did we not know that? And so the fact that they have another law, the common nightwalker statute, to change to in case they get in trouble for the first one is unbelievable. So they're like, okay, we just want to take these girls off the street. So now we're going to have something where we can just talk to them through the window of the car. And if the girl makes an offer, now she can get not necessarily arrested, but she can be held, and then they get her off the street, and they do this all the time. A great person to talk to is that McDonald, what's his name? Guy who's the professor at Clark who used to be on the Vice. I think it's Tim McDonald. He used to be a Vice. Yeah. And he's talked about this in public. They used to use this every time there was the parents' weekend for Clark. They would just go sweep all the girls down to Main South, and it would make Clark look like it was fancier than it is.
That's so fun.
Just a thing on the chief though. I don't really blame him for phrasing it that way. Like, yeah, I get the distaste for it, but he is, not an elected official. He's the chief of police. I mean, we know there was, it became public. I forget how many years ago now, 21 guys called out one day immediately after somebody was disciplined.
Right.
We saw in New York with the previous mayor, that not only were they turned their back on him, but one group wasn't writing tickets in Times Square for like a week or something, which is a big deal in New York, right? It's a big revenue deal.
Mm-hmm.
You can't have mutiny on the ship, right?
Right.
And so it shouldn't be him that has to say. I mean, it would be nice if somebody would actually acknowledge that there's a systemic problem here and we need to fix it. I'd take that, but I don't expect him to go all ham about, so they're not in positions where they break the law. I don't expect him to say that publicly.
Right.
But we have elected officials that should be, speaking for the people. We shouldn't have to rely on the chief of police who, in the end leads the department to be making those statements. But our elected officials, at least 6 of them, everything's fine.
That's a good point, and it's a question that really sort of gets to like the internal push and pull that we can sort of assume happens with the police unions are representing a sort of rank and file and like the administrative brass, and you really are in a very strange position there, because the blue flu thing is real, and that is like that, and that's just even more an indictment of everything we've been talking about. It's like, what are you supposed to do about that?
I think one thing to do is in my view, city council, by doing nothing to change the structure, that would actually be their job, right? Because that's the ordinance stuff, is changing the structure. Unless you're going to have, determining the facts outside of the department, you're just sticking him into, a better, I certainly think a better leader, a better human being than we've had in the last 20 years. But you're still sticking him at the top of a system that just has already failed you. And you're changing nothing about the system.
Yeah, just being is it fixed?
Yeah, right. So essentially, they're setting him up to fail, so they don't have to do anything because they're afraid. At least some of them, they campaign on very little else, but they support the police, and they can't have police pushing back on that.
Right.
They are also setting it up to cover themselves if he doesn't work out. I think that there is zero doubt in my mind that Davenport's the next guy. Zero. So they got him promoted, right? He had the lawsuit back and forth with them, a few years back, and they're now positioning him to be that next guy. So then what they do is, if it's not fixed, they can say, well, yeah, but we look what we're doing. We're diversity. Look. So now they can cover themselves with that exchange. And so they're going to start looking for folks that they can move up that would be that next distraction from the narrative. Without what Tom's saying, without some independent thing, it's always going to be the same cycle of problems. So he might make it more efficient. He might, he might clean up training defects, as he kept pointing out at the meeting, right? He might change those things, but the culture won't change. And so what they have to do is then they have to create now a pipeline of non-civil service people that will do the things that they're asking him to do now, right? And so then I think it sets him up to be fired. Realistically, whether it's 3 years from now or 5 years from now, and then replaced with the next guy. Although he'll resign, but we'll all know why.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah. But I mean, if city council doesn't do anything, then it doesn't have its fingerprints on anything, and it can't be blamed for anything. That seems to be the strategy.
Right.
That's the perfect segue to the next and probably last thing that we want to talk about, because we got to let you guys go. But my favorite moment from the meeting was when Joe Petty was asking his questions. And none of them were actual questions that he wanted to know the answer to. They were all very transparently like the kind of questions you ask when you're trying to get your friend out of like fucking trouble. And he goes, so the dog bites, looks here where we have an acceptable ratio of dog bites.
And there's a ratio of bites, I think 13.7%. It's in the report. Can you explain that and where we are with other departments in that particular?
The dog bite ratio is, the chief cited some sort of case somewhere that laid out the acceptable amount of times that a police dog can bite somebody out of the amount of times a police dog has been near somebody.
Within that 5-year timeline, WPD had 15 bites. Case law, Kerr versus West Palm Beach, stipulates that anything under 30% is an accepted bite ratio. Our bite ratio, I believe, is 13.47%.
Okay.
And Joe Petty was just like, yep, okay, so 13% of the time the dogs bite. Okay, look, we're under the ratio.
We're under
That's
that.
great. That's
We're
great.
under it.
We're under the ratio.
So I don't want to scoop anybody, but go ahead and dig into that study that he's citing, and you'll see who paid for it. And then you'll know exactly where that came from. It's really not that. It's so blatantly transparent that they don't. I don't think this is where I become super cynical about our overall the world, the country, and everything. And you see where it comes from, and you start to realize they just don't care. It's not that they're skilled or that they have the ability to tell us how to operate or they're going to govern well. They're just like, you know what? We really don't care what you think. We're just going to do this. We'll pay for a study. The study will confirm what we need, confirmation bias. We don't care. And then we're going to use that study. We're just going to hammer the public with it. Because unlike other than us four and a couple other people in the city that are trying to do some good work, opening the doors and, lifting the veil, unless there's anybody like us, the four white guys with a podcast kind of theory, right? they don't care, and they know that there's not enough of us to really push them to really look at it, because they only do that when it's like a icon, like so like when Maria Stefanos pushed back on Andrea Cabral in Suffolk County with the jail and all that stuff. She can, because she's fucking Maria Stefanos. So she can say what she wants, and they'll listen to her. So that's why all of a sudden they didn't use the regular investigative reporter for Channel 5. They used Maria, and then now it became like a big story. And the Suffolk County had to back down a little bit on, the catch and release thing that they were doing with the $100 bail people, right? So, but we don't have that in Worcester, really. Who would it be? Would it be Hank? Would it be, I just don't.
Hank's on a
who
milf.
it would be. Yeah, I mean, maybe it was Ray. I guess if Ray came at them, and I do think that Ray, when he wrote that article out of nowhere saying that they were they messed up on the ceasefire petition, is the reason why in somehow in Mayor Petty's logic train that he decided to then support the LGBTQ petition. Right? I swear that there's some connection there. It's like, oh, Ray criticized me. I now have to do something to cover because Ray mentioned me. You know what I mean? I think there's like that, which is crazy, because why listen to Ray? Like what? Like is he like an esteemed journalist of some kind? I just don't see it that way, and so we just don't have that person in Worcester. Bill, maybe you and Chris will be that someday. I know it'll never be me and Tom. So how do we? How do we get that? I don't know. I guess we just keep pushing, and hopefully younger people will come along that want to dig in too, and then maybe that'll lead to something down the line. But it doesn't seem like there's a horizon in the near future where they're not going to do something as blatant as the dog bites theory. The dogs only bite 13% of the time. Okay, all right.
Yeah.
Great.
Yeah, I mean, and look, there's some place for like metrics compared to other departments or something like that. But I mean, when some of the stuff that's led to the litigation or led to controversy, at least, I mean, it's been people getting bit by the dog. One case, a guy getting bit by a dog. He's already well under control.
Yeah.
And they just didn't stop the dog because they didn't, for whatever reason. But I just want to add my, I'm trying to get this phrase into the kind of pop culture of Worcester. They aren't looking, really, the city council. They aren't looking because they don't care, because it won't happen to them.
Right. Yeah.
And I'm going to keep saying it, and maybe they'll listen someday.
They can totally be relied on. I mean, like it's the grossest, it's the subtlest rhetorical thing, but it's the grossest thing when Kate Toomey uses the word "we" when she talks about the police.
She does.
She constantly will use the term "we." As she did it, like it sounded like when she was reading off her script that she totally wrote, no one else wrote at City Council. On Tuesday, she kept going back. I kept using that term "we" when she's talking about the cops, and it's like,
It's like you are not a member of that department, lady.
Right. It's like being it's like the main perk for being a part-time city councilor to some of our city councilors is that you get to sort of like claim valor a little bit. You get to like kind of associate yourself with the police department in some way.
And look, this is a woman that's in their 10th year of chairing this the public safety committee, which has jurisdiction over whatever jurisdiction a committee has over the police department. And she's never in that committee taken up an item related to anything about discipline.
Yeah.
She has a chairperson's order. Get this. This is a kicker. She has a chairperson's order asking for a cost-benefit analysis comparing the cost of the body camera, before they did body cameras, obviously, the cost of the body camera program compared to the potential future cost of civil rights litigation. In other words, if it's cheaper, screw your rights.
We can just keep absorbing these costs.
Yeah, I mean, cheaper than the cameras.
Yeah, Rice Square might not have air conditioners, but yeah, we're paying the lawsuits. Yeah,
it's unbelievable.
Yeah. Yeah, Chris.
Do you think any counselor at all in this cycle, right? Because this cycle is already brutal. It's already really brutal.
Oh,
now they sent those 3 items to the Public Safety Committee, right? All 3 of them, including the petition from the union chiefs. And my question is how does she avoid a meeting? She's got to have a public hearing, right? Because the mayor needs her to run cover for his 5 meetings pledge, right? Because remember, the mayor promised 5 hearings public. So now he did 1. So now is he going to have the Public Safety Committee cover 3 of those? And then maybe it comes back to city council and then he can say that's fine. Because I'm trying to figure out how he gets out of his own pledge. And I think that's probably some plan that they have where they've negotiated, all right, so you got to hold a hearing for each of these items, Kate. And then, but what do those hearings even look like? I have no idea. And so I guarantee they get filed in that committee, except for maybe 1. And I'm just not sure which one will get out. Maybe it's the report from the city manager, which has already been given now, right?
Yeah. It's pointless. We really can't expect. I don't know. I guess that's a good concluding note. But where possibly do you expect this to go now?
I mean, I really do. Of all the guys available, I think this is the best guy, and I think we accidentally landed on him. It's just a complete happy accident that this guy ended up being the guy from there. But, I hate to say it, there's only 2 paths forward for real reform. One, you have to have some black or brown kid get killed by a cop in the city of Worcester, and then only then will things change. That's horrible to say, but that might be one path, right? And then you really get pressure, sustained public pressure. And the other thing is this is something I touched on in my article, is that you really need a true coalition builder of some kind. And so I noticed that the LGBTQ groups didn't show up for this one. And I'm not trying to say that they're bad or good. It's not that. It's just that you need sustained pressure for anything to happen in the city of Worcester. Sustained, constant pressure. And so they really do look at our city as divide and conquer. So they don't believe that the African American groups are going to get with the LGBT groups, that are going to get with the Hispanic American groups. They don't believe that that's going to happen. And they kind of have evidence to say that that's very much true. And so how do we get the leaders of those groups to be on the same page? I don't know. I'm not 100% sure. I mean, even with the little paragraph I wrote the other day, I got 15 people telling me I was a jerk. And so it's like, well, I'm not criticizing your group or what you were trying to do, because I was there for those too. Bill, you were there covering them live. And it's like, how do you get you to also use that same energy for something like this? And then maybe the police, maybe the 6 people in the majority, one of them will pay attention and vote the opposite way. We also had a lot of hope for George, because George sometimes is the real swing vote, but he kind of shows who he is, right? He now that he's out, he's like, whatever. I'm just going to do what I'm going to do. And so I just don't know who that hopeful person is, but that's the only 2 paths, either tragedy or some hero that we don't know about that rises up and starts to get everybody together. I just don't see it on the horizon.
Yeah, I think it's like many heroes, it's intersectional organizing, I think is what we're talking about here. And I think we have started to see some intersectional organizing coming together. But that's how we get like all of the things that we want ultimately, including action on this is when we bring all of our interests together and realize correctly that they are all interconnected, and we all sort of push together.
Yeah, I think it's pretty clear that the city manager kind of said, so we're done with this now. And that's the message from the 6 on the and the city, the majority of the city council is we're kind of done with this now. There was a lot of talk back on December 17th of rolling up our sleeves and getting to work, and that was apparently their example of rolling up their sleeves and getting to work, which is doing absolutely nothing.
Well, an Outdoor Cats rule, I think that's rule number 2 or number 3. When somebody says they're going to roll up their sleeves and get to work, no work is being accomplished. That is not something anyone has said before doing actual work. Yeah.
I agree with John though. It's gonna. I'm probably a little more cynical after seeing what happened on Tuesday than John even is. I'm not sure that somebody getting killed would change anything.
Not only do they have to be killed, but it has to be caught at multiple angles on video, and we need to because again, the reasonable standard, right? Well, it was reasonable for this officer to shoot this kid because X. That's how dark we are. That's just
I guess you can give them some credit on that front. That look, there's no shortage of guns in the city, and outside of a very troubled and ill person on Grafton Street a few years ago, which I did a pretty exhaustive review of and couldn't get myself to a place other than I don't know what else you expected of them, right? But people don't get killed in the city by police hardly ever. It's very rare, so that's good. But like this attitude, especially amongst those that have been there, it seems like it gets worse the longer you're there. That older generation of folks, who was prominently was the most represented group, 50 plus, in the racial equity audit survey. And they just don't think all the results say these people don't even believe in racism, Right. And I doubt it would be I'm sure it would be much different amongst the younger people there, but it seemed like they didn't really participate in the survey. But it's about culture, and I think it's about holding people responsible when they screw up. That doesn't mean everything is the death sentence. That doesn't mean everybody gets fired. But this system where you have brothers and sisters and investigating their brothers and sisters, that is always going to fail. It's always going to fail. And until you change that, I don't think you're changing anything.
Well, the work never ends. We got to roll up our sleeves. We got to roll up our sleeves.
That means it's nap time.
Yeah, right. We got to go to our very real state job. Tom and John, thank you so much for coming on. Is there anything that you guys want to tease or plug on your way out?
Well, I'll say this. I do want to say to you guys, I think that this work is valid and that it's essential, right? So it doesn't really matter how many people listen to it or, you just keep building. And I think that the more of us that are having these conversations, even if there's nuance in position, keep going. So I love the show. I've been listening to it. I've been reading Bill for I don't know how long. I should probably upgrade to paid and finally just bite the bullet and give you a couple bucks.
Yeah, in fact, I'm not posting this till I see that receipt.
I got you.
I'm not posting this episode until that $5 clears.
All right, I'll make it happen.
Look, I publish news without a subscription model, so you're gonna be waiting a long time for that $5 because I ain't got it. I know you've been praised for this a lot, but the work that you did with Heather on the Manfredo case was incredible. We have differences in approach, obviously, but much respect for. I think you're most valuable when you dial into something like that. Like when you really dial into your kind of reporter roots. We have different approaches, but much respect. You've done important work.
Well, hey, thank you. But I was asking you guys if you had anything to plug.
Yeah, there's
not
nothing.
to ladle praise on us. What?
Read This Week in Worcester after you read Bill. And John and I do a podcast live, Facebook, Twitter, etc., YouTube, 8:30 every Sunday.
Great. Well, thank you guys so much for coming on.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Guys.
See you guys.
Yeah. See ya.
It's for you. It's for you. Yeah, it's for all my street niggas. Feel it. On the count of three, say fuck the police. 1, 2, 3, fuck the police. Yeah, fuck them.
That was fun. Just talking about how the police are never going to change ever again, and we have no power to stop them. Yeah, yeah. Especially with how we open the episode, makes for a heavy episode. But
yeah, it's always interesting to talk to folks who are really into the granular. For me, I guess, as an abolitionist, as someone who's like, let's just fucking like shut it down and knock the building down and like start something else up. That's probably not going to happen tomorrow or the next day. So it's always very interesting and informative, I think, for me to talk to people who are looking at, kind of the granular parts of what's going on and who's getting promoted and kind of where that leaves us and what the dynamics are. So yeah, I thought that was a really fun, interesting conversation.
Yeah, the internal politics of the police department is something that like really never makes the local news, right?
Not at all.
Not even a little bit. And so much is bound up in that. So yeah, I that was one of the more interesting parts of the conversation to me as well, is like thinking about like the sort of precarious king of the hill type of situation that any police chief is in at any given time, and how they go about navigating that. I am right there with you. I think that nothing about that conversation or anything I've observed about the way that this DOJ report has been handled has led me to believe that there is a way you can reform your way out of police department, and the police department is just going to be what the police department is. It cannot be tweaked into submission. There's no technocratic solution, and there is no liberal reform solution for what policing is. I just don't think there is.
Yeah, and I know, you and I have talked about this before, and you've written about it before, and The Wire comes up in the interview, but also, The Shield comes up in the interview, but also, looking at the dynamics that are portrayed in The Wire, which are, obviously fictional, but based on a, very true story. And then I know you and I have also geeked out about The City Is Ours, which maybe we should link to or something.
That's a really good one.
Yeah. It's a sick system, and within it, people may go into it sick or they may not. But it sort of, as you're churned through it, you cannot help but become subject to it. And it's interesting and depressing to think about.
Sure is. But Chris, you promised that there was something that was going to lighten the mood a little bit on the way out of here.
Yeah, I wanted to talk about a little thing that I actually wanted to talk about this last week when it happened, but we ran out of time. But Bill, have you ever heard of the Barkley Marathons?
I have no idea what the Barkley Marathons are.
Well, I am so excited to tell you and our listeners about what they are if they don't know. So, this is a thing I stumbled upon. There was a documentary on Netflix several years ago called The Barkley Marathons, The Race That Eats Its Young, or something like that.
Coming up in the program, we're going to be talking to the founder of an endurance race so tough, hardly anyone has ever finished it.
And so I watched this thing. I have a fascination with things that people do, that people are obsessions of people's that have no resonance with me, like things that I would never do. And this one struck me in that category immediately. The Barkley Marathons is a race that started in the 90s, I think. And it was started by this guy, Gary Cantrell, who goes by Lazarus Lake or Laz. And it happens in Tennessee, and it happens in the mountains around a penitentiary called the Brushy Mountain State Penitentiary, which has since been closed in the last like decade or so. But James Earl Ray, who assassinated Martin Luther King allegedly, was held there and once escaped from there. And he was an escapee for 56 hours, and he made it 8 miles through this like rugged, crazy mountainous terrain. And this guy saw that happen. He lives in the area, and he thought, man, I think I could have made it 100 miles. And he turned this into one of the most bonkers races in the world. So let me tell you about the Barclay Marathons. Thousands of people enter to participate every year, but only 40 runners are accepted. Runners have to answer strange questions or like translate texts into strange languages or do other tasks. They also have to write an essay about why they want to run in the race. If they're selected, the entry fee is $1.60. And then you also have to bring a clothing item that is for Laz. It's like if he needs socks that year, then everyone has to bring like a size 11 sock. If you're a first-time runner, you also have to bring a license plate from your home state or country, and they're all hung up and displayed. Returning runners have to bring him a pack of Camel cigarettes. So this is why are we getting close to the place where this might be speaking to your heart?
Yes, I'm already endeared to it, and I want to go every year.
Fantastic. All right. Yeah. So this is a 5-loop race. It's supposed to be 100 miles, but most of the runners think it is probably more like 120 to 130 miles. You have 60 hours to do it. If you make 3 loops, that's called a fun run. That's 60 miles up and down these mountains. It takes 5 loops to actually complete the race. There are years where no one completes the race. We're going to link to some videos that you can watch and some other things about this. But just to put this in perspective, in this race where you're going 120-ish miles and you have to do it within 60 hours, the climb rate is higher than ascending Mount Everest from sea level 2 times.
Whoa.
And then, the date of the race is only known to the runners and Laz, but it's around April Fool's Day. And then the time of the start, once the date is determined and the runners are told, the time of the start happens sometime between 11 p.m. or between midnight, I think, and noon on the day. And nobody knows until Laz comes out and blows a conch shell, and that signals that there is an hour until the race starts. And then the race actually starts when he lights a cigarette.
Holy shit. Oh, I gotta read up on this. This sounds so cool.
I'll send you I'll send you the links, and everybody will have this stuff for the documentary. I think this is really fascinating because it's basically designed to be at the right at the edge of impossible to do.
Right.
And
right.
so there are many years where no one finishes. And last year, this has gained in popularity since the documentary came out, and there's been more finishers. Last year, there were 5 finishers, including the first woman to ever finish. And so what happens when there's too many finishers is they sort of rejigger things and make it harder. So this just happened last week. Hat tip to my friend and I think an occasional listener, Jess Howland, who reminded me that the race was happening last week. This year, no one was able to finish the race. I think 4 people completed the fun run, which is the 3 laps.
Yeah.
And yeah, this is all through like prickers, and you go through like an outer part of the prison now that the prison's been closed. It's wild. It's a really, really cool thing. And anyway, yeah, I just thought it was a fun way to end. So
yeah.
I hope some people now get a little bit obsessed with the Barclay marathons like I am.
It has. I like that idea of reshifting it to be to keep it so that like finishing it is not to be expected. It's really hard to even just complete the challenge, and especially with all the other whimsy attached to it, and the fact that like it's only $1.60 to get in. It's like that really is the motivating factor, is like doing something that is impossible for a lot of people. It's kind of like, it's like really, sport, like kind of the most like decoupled from, the sports industry that I've ever heard. Like it's like there's no FanDuel involved here, right? It's not like it's
exactly.
It's not ESPN. You can't go pro at the Barclay Marathon.
Yeah, totally. Also, they play taps whenever someone has to quit the race, which sometimes happens when you're like miles and miles and miles from the starting point. So you have to hike back. And every year he picks a sacrificial person who he thinks has no chance of finishing the race, and that one person is also allowed to compete. But yeah, it's really cool seeing people try something that is right at the edge of physical possibility.
Yeah, that I was just thinking that Worcester could benefit from a really whimsical, silly challenge, but we have a whimsical, silly sports challenge. The
George
biking
Street.
up that hill, the George Street thing. I need to. I don't know when that is, but I have never been there for that in person, and I really need to check that out. Yeah, I should cover it. Yeah, we gotta think of some other whimsical events for
more whimsy.
Whimsy is the perfect foil to the just aestheticization of authoritarianism that's going on right now. The most anti-authoritarian thing you could do is be a little whimsical. Aestheticization of the technical form. That's man, I cannot pronounce these academic words.
You can say it any way you want, Bill. It's our podcast.
Aestheticization. All right, we've been recording for too long. And I got a busy week ahead of me. We got freaking sort of late show. I'm doing the house band on Friday. Saturday morning, I'm driving out to UMass Amherst to be on a labor to partake in the strike labor conference on a panel with Dusty Christensen, who's a professor out there, and Kim Kelly, who's one of the best labor writers in the game. There was a dropout. I got asked to do it last minute, so I'm doing that. But then I have to get back to Worcester for the punk rock flea market, where I will have brand new Worcester Sex merch design. So come on down to that. Come on down to the Vernon at 1, and you can get your brand new Bad Brains themed Worcester Sex merch design.
Dude, I'm so excited about this. And Sort of Late Show is at Off the Rails at what time on Friday, Bill?
Off the Rails at 7 p.m. No, doors at 7, show starts at 8. The guest is awesome. The guest is Pat Flynn from Have Heart and Fiddlehead. Pretty legendary Boston musician. Gonna come down, talk about hardcore, maybe reignite some old beefs, turn them into new beefs. No, I'm just kidding. But
no, it's good. More beefs, more whimsy, more beefs,
more whimsy, more beefs. Oh man, I need a beef. I'm starving.
Yeah, let's get out of here.
Yeah, all right. I'll talk to everyone next week.
For real. And see, now we got these fake cops. They thought he had a gun. Made a mistake, cops. I hate cops. Turn on the TV. Is this another cop busted for illegal business? They out of control. They out of their minds. They pulling you over. They hopping inside. Just know you got drugs and know you got guns. And they know when they mad when they can't find none. Stupid. Don't you know they give in at the stash box? The he be in and need a key to get in it. You need your you people suck my balls. All y'all off the wall get stupid, dog.